Do you believe it when government says that they don't have money to put up necessary infrastructure? For example, if you go right now in many places in many towns in Kenya, you notice that there's a total lack of infrastructure. Many times you have to walk on muddy streets or dusty streets because the roads are not paved. There is no sewage in majority of the neighborhoods. There's no piped water, and there's almost no government services. They don't pick up the trash, they don't cut the grass, they don't do any maintenance. The place is always, tacky and untidy and very third world. And so when you talk to the government, or to the people in charge, and you ask them why is the situation the way it is, the first thing they'll tell you is that they don't have the resources to build or maintain the public spaces that we have. So the argument is that you as a citizenry are not paying enough taxes to them for them to be able to deliver these services. Now we can use the example of paved roads. And some of the things they don't do, they don't even put signage, like stop signs, direction signs, traffic lights. They don't even give the roads or the streets names so that you can navigate your way throughout the physical, place. So they don't do anything, basically, right? So anytime you ask them, they say, you're not paying taxes, you're not paying us money, we cannot deliver any of these services. And on the face of it, it sounds logical, it sounds sensible. But when you sit down and think of what they're claiming, they're saying that they don't have these pieces of paper, which is called money. That's why the road doesn't exist. So you always wonder, what does this piece of paper have to do with the road? Because it's just a piece of paper. What does the printed piece of paper have to do with the road? The road is a physical thing that is not made up of pieces of paper. But they tell you, because you haven't given them these pieces of paper, they cannot build the road. So you sit down and ask yourself, where does that piece of paper that is printed on, that you call money, where does that piece of paper come from? It comes from the government. It's the government that prints those pieces of paper and distributes to you. So how can they argue that you haven't given them those pieces of paper, which is where they cannot build the road, yet they are the source of those pieces of paper, which you call money, right? It's like your child asking you, why don't we have a TV in this house? And you turn back and you tell your child, we don't have a TV in this house because you haven't given me a portion of the pocket money that I gave you. Now the child looks back at you and says, but you're the source of that pocket money. You gave me that money. So what do you mean that I have to give you a portion of this money that you gave me so that you can buy a TV? Yet you're the source of the money, as far as I'm concerned. So the argument that they claim that they don't have the resources to build roads or to build anything or to do anything is a very suspect argument. In fact, it's a very juvenile argument, and it is also a very false argument. Let us examine, and I'm just using this as an example, let us examine the issue of roads. What is a road? A paved road, right? And let's use that as an example to see whether the argument of money makes sense in the national context. Now, when you look at a road, you can use different materials to make roads. For whatever reason, they choose to use tarmac. And you very well know that the tarmac is like an oil-based product that has to be imported, which brings about complexity about foreign currency and things of that nature. So let's put the tarmac road aside. Let's say we build roads using concrete. Okay? And let's see whether their argument makes sense. Because as far as I'm concerned, this lack of infrastructure argument that the government gives does not make any kind of sense. So, when you look at the nature of paving roads, one of the best materials to use is concrete, because a concrete road survives for a long, long time. And the government of Kenya usually refuses to use concrete roads. They insist upon using tarmac roads, despite the fact that tarmac is an oil-based product that has to be imported, for which they need foreign currency. Now, when we examine the issue of public infrastructure like roads and the issue of money being the reason why they haven't built up the road network in Kenya, we can clearly see that what they're saying is not correct. Now, cement is a domestic product, right? Every single item you need to build a concrete road is available in Kenya. Let me give you an example. Cement is made from taking limestone, clay, and sand and burning it. That's it. Limestone in Kenya, we have a lot of limestone in Kenya. Let me tell you, if you didn't know. We have over, like just in Mombasa, in Bamburi and Mombasa, we have over 50 million tons of limestone. In other places, we have over 100 million tons of limestone. And they also discovered more limestone somewhere in Lodwar, where, Kapenguria, where they're supposed to open up a cement factory. Hundreds and of millions of tons of limestone. It's freely available. We don't have to manufacture it. All we have to do is to scoop it up. Sand is also freely available. Like, we just scoop it up from the riverbeds, free of charge. The only cost we have is to scoop it up. Clay, free of charge. So, every element that we need to make cement is locally available. Even to burn it up, you can use coal, and they discovered vast amounts of coal in, I think, in Kitui, right? So everything is there locally, freely available. The other thing that you need to make concrete, and we've covered it already, it's sand and ballast, broken stones, hard stones. Now, Kenya is a very stony country, as you know, and we literally pick up these stones off the ground. The only cost is to crush the stones. The stones are freely available. Very hard stone, right? Ile kokoto. Now, every element that we need to make a concrete road is more or less available in Kenya at cost, right? Despite that, the government refuses to make concrete roads. And we have everything available. And they argue that they need these pieces of paper that they call money to build the road. Now, let's put everything together. If I need to build a road right now, and it's a concrete road, everything is right there available in Kenya. All I have to do is to take everything up, mix it up with water, and pour it on the ground. And let it cure. And you have a road, a paved road, right there and then. Where does money come into the issue? No, seriously. Let us actually examine, where does that piece of paper that they're saying they need, where does that come into the issue? People say you need to buy the concrete. I don't really think you need to buy the concrete at the national level. Why? Because all these people who produce, what is this? Cement, they can pay you taxes in kind. Instead of paying money, they can actually pay with the cement that they produce. They can give you the cement that you can then use to build the road. When it comes to sand, we are picking it from the ground for free. Ballast, we are picking it from the ground for free. The only actual cost I can imagine is just to transport it. Let me give you an example. One day there was a man who went to a village, and he met this farmer, and this farmer had 4 sons, and he had like 20 acres. And on his farm, he had a small river passing through. And the farm was next to a limestone deposit. And it had some trees. And what was interesting was that the farmer was living in a mud hut. So the guy asked the farmer, why do you live in a mud hut? So the farmer argues and says, well, I don't have money to build a house. So the guy asks him, why do you need money to build a house for? And the farmer is looking at this guy as if this guy is stupid or crazy. No, but the guy persists and asks him, why do you need those pieces of paper to build the house? Because those are just pieces of paper. So the farmer says, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to build this house without money? The guy says, you don't need any kind of piece of paper. So the guy says, let me organize you. Let me organize everything and let's see whether this house can be built. So the guy takes the 4 sons who are right there. They go dig up the limestone. They cut down some trees. They burn the limestone. And they produce cement. And then they take the mud that is by the riverbed, the riverbank rather. They take the mud and they form blocks, building blocks, right? And then they go to the same river and scoop up the sand. And then they take the stones on the farm and they crush them to create ballast. And they start building a house. And they build the house. And they even pour a concrete ceiling on it. So the lesson is this: every single element that farmer needed to build a stone house, a concrete house, was on his farm. He did not need any kind of piece of paper to build that house. It is the same way in Kenya. Every single thing that we need to build roads, to be honest with you, can be found in Kenya. Everything. The labor is there. Do you have to pay for labor? Not really. You don't have to. I mean, we have over 20,000 people sitting in prisons. What are they doing? They are eating free food. They can be put to work. You're going to feed them anyway, right? You might as well put them to work to build some of these roads. So already you have the labor right there. You have all the natural elements that you need for a concrete road. And even to do, sewer pipes. Because they're nothing but concrete pipes. And like we said, we have everything that we need to make concrete on our own. But somehow, the government keeps on arguing that they need pieces of paper to build the roads. Yet all the elements, each and every element that you would need to build a road is freely available within the borders of the country. When the British first invaded Kenya, the first thing they did was to try and cut wider roads everywhere. How did they do it? They didn't have any pieces of paper. So what did they do? They took their guns and they forced the people to build the roads. They just forced them. All of you in this village, you have to do like 5 kilometers of road. Yep. So they didn't need pieces of paper. They needed labor, and the labor was there. They needed to compel the labor to work, so they had guns. So all I'm arguing is saying that when they say that they need pieces of colored paper to produce a road, they are not being honest. Because a road is not made up of pieces of paper. It is made up of practical materials that we have freely available. And so, no roads are built. You have to live with the indignity of walking on mud when it's wet and walking on dust when it's dry. In this day and age, majority of the neighborhoods in Kenya don't have a functioning sewage system. And when you look at the level of construction, especially of, flats all over you can clearly see that there's a problem, because those flats, those houses generate a lot of wastewater, and there's no public sewage system. So where does all the wastewater go? It's poured into the street. So basically, a significant proportion of the population, especially in urban areas that are not served with the public sewer system, literally live in sewage. That the small river you see by the side of the road is sewage. So the levels of stench and disease is also high. So how can it be that in 2021 there is no public sewage system in majority of the neighborhoods? I do understand that it's a third world country, but even then, I think that's a bit extreme. Yet there's presumably a functioning government that keeps on arguing that they need pieces of paper to put in the sewage. It's very ironical. They don't cut grass or do any maintenance work anywhere. So anytime you're walking along the streets, they're always untidy, they're always messy. It's always embarrassing. So when you ask them why don't you cut the grass and do some maintenance, they argue that we don't have the colored pieces of paper. Yet they're the source of those colored pieces of paper. They're the ones who print those pieces of paper, but they keep on arguing that they don't have those pieces of paper. Yet they are the printer of the pieces of paper. You'd think, fine, if you need those pieces of paper, go print more. What's stopping you? They'll argue and say, inflation is stopping me. But how do you get inflation in a country where majority of the people are extremely poor? What would cause the inflation? Because inflation simply means there's too much money chasing too few goods. There's not too much money in Kenya. We have massive poverty in Kenya. So we're not arguing for the unrestricted printing of money, even though the richest countries, that's exactly what they do. They simply create value out of thin air. They simply generate currency out of thin air according to the political need. So it's a terrible thing that various county governments say that they don't have pieces of paper, that's why they can't deliver on any services. In this day and age, we should not be living the way we are living in Kenya. Anyway, on a practical level, the issue of total lack of infrastructure can be addressed very simply. The people who owe taxes can pay taxes in kind. If there's a minimum amount that you're supposed to pay in taxes, and you can impose a minimum amount that people should pay in taxes, when people are too financially poor to afford to pay taxes in the form of cash, they can pay taxes in the form of labor. And you can use that labor to have people work on their own neighborhoods, that in lieu of paying X amount of shillings in tax, everyone can pay using their labor. You can say, fine, then you owe us X number of hours in terms of labor, since you're not able to pay us the taxes in terms of cash. So once you collect all that labor, put people to work. Let them build their own streets. Let them build their own sewage system. All you have to do is to organize them and supply the materials. And the people who supply those materials can also supply the materials in lieu of taxes. The cement companies can supply the cement in lieu of taxes, of cash taxes. Suppliers with the cement, the people who make the ballast, the people who scoop up the sand, they can all pay in kind. And over time, we can even have very modest goals in terms of the number of streets, the number of kilometers that we can pave. But at least have a goal and work towards it. And move away from tarmac, because tarmac doesn't work very well for Kenya. It's very high maintenance. And when it's rained on, it doesn't even survive. We should move on to concrete roads, because we have a lot of concrete, raw materials freely available in Kenya. And it's a shame that we have mountains of limestone, mountains of ballast, mountains of sand, yet majority of the streets are not paved. I think it robs people dignity to be walking in mud. You can never be clean. It's always dusty, and the dust is not healthy when you breathe in the dust. And you always wonder, the countries that developed, who gave them the pieces of paper for them to be able to build up their infrastructure? To which country did they go to get the pieces of paper that are called money? They printed the money. The money is fiat currency. It's not backed by anything. Kenya's currency is not backed by gold or by silver or by oil or by anything. It's fiat currency. It's a pure imaginary piece of paper that people assign value to it. You can print it in unlimited quantities. You're not constrained by anything. It's not a silver certificate, it's not a gold certificate. It's literally just a piece of paper. So in conclusion, the lack of infrastructure right now in Kenya is just unacceptable, and the excuse that governments have given is also not acceptable. And we as a public should reject the argument that they cannot build up infrastructure because they don't have colored pieces of paper that they themselves print every single day. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, and comment below. Kenya's time has come. Our time has come. Your time has come. A time to succeed and not fail. A time to grow wealth and not poverty. A time to go up and not down. It's time for you to stop walking and drive your car. Stop renting and buy yourself a house. It's your time to get blessed. Join the CCV movement, and together let us kick poverty and unemployment out of Kenya. Become a member today. Donate what you can. And remember that the CCV is the only political organization in Kenya that is squarely built upon Christian values, unlike the rest. We'll see you next time. Thank you.